and welcome to our Smart Business Series. I am Grace Martin. I am your program and event coordinator for the North Tampa Bay Chamber. We are really excited to have Brian Ellis today. He is from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Disaster Preparedness. I think I've got all of that right, which is actually very timely with Hurricane Michael, right? Barreling down on us. So we're excited to have Brian here, give us some tips and tricks for, preparing yourself, your business, the community, everything like that. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian so we can get started.
Awesome.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much. So I'm Brian Ellis, a disaster recovery coordinator for the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I was born and raised in Seminole, Florida. I went to USF in Pinellas County, went to USF, St. Petersburg, graduated there, and now I work for the Regional Planning Council. In 2004, 2005, we had a very active hurricane season. A couple hurricanes came through. Fast forward to 2017, we had a very active hurricane season. Again, we had Hurricane Irma come through. So we went about 12, 13 years of a little bit of complacency without a major storm event. So last year, quite a few of us were caught off guard, and I'm sure you were all affected by Hurricane Irma. And if you look in the news today, you see what's taking place in the other part of Florida. But this is something that we are focusing on. So FEMA estimates that of all businesses that failed due to a disaster, 40% of them failed because they had no plan in place. They did not know what to do when disaster struck their business. They were ill prepared. 1 in 4 businesses can expect to experience a disruptive event in their entire operation due to a disaster. That's not limited to a hurricane or tornado. It can be anything from political unrest, employee theft, fire, lightning, all kinds of things. So the time to start thinking about these things is now when the sun is shining. Continuity is important. It takes time, it costs money, but it's something that you should think about. The steps I'd like to talk about today are preparation, responding, and recovery. Preparation is going to be the most important stage. For every dollar, this is a FEMA estimate, for every dollar spent in the preparation phase to prepare your business, $6 can be saved when it comes to recovery. So preparation is going to be the most important. Response, what do you do when disaster strikes? And recovery, what do you do to pick up the pieces? So by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. The time to think about preparing your business is now when the sun is shining. Communication, this is going to be most critical, most important with everything you do, with everything in your business, not just disaster recovery. But in terms of disaster recovery, it's important to think about. When a disaster is imminent, have proper communication in place. Know what to do. Is a text message or phone call sufficient to communicate with all of your stakeholders when it relates to your business? Probably not. More than likely, somebody here had difficulty communicating during Hurricane Irma last year. Was that text message good enough? Was that email good enough? You need to consider your business exclusively and figure out what's optimal. One method of after-hour communication, how do you get in touch with your stakeholders when your business is closed? Does anyone here have any employees that don't speak English as a first language, or stakeholders or delivery drivers? Consider these things in advance prior to a disaster situation. How do you communicate with these people? Establish a single point of contact. To me, this is most important when it comes to communication. Has anyone here watched a major story play out in the country and one media station covers it one way, one covers it a different way? By the time you're done watching this coverage, you're not quite sure what's taking place. Bad information is just as bad as no information. No information is just bad. You don't want to be not able to communicate with people. So have one voice that can vet information, disseminate information, communicate with everybody involved. One voice so that you don't have different stories going astray. So this is critical. Communicate with everybody, including your customers. They need to know when you're going to be ready to resume operations. And this is a forecasted track of Hurricane Irma. So monitor the news, forecast what's on the horizon. With some disasters, we don't know what's going to take place or when they're going to take place. With others, we do. With hurricanes, give or take, sometimes we get 7 to 10 days notice. Tornadoes, lightning, we get none at all. But look on the horizon and see what's out there, what's pending, what can affect you. So an example I have, a few years ago, business owners in the Tampa Bay area and throughout the country were faced with a shortage of limes. There was a shortage of limes in Central and South America. The price of limes went up, the quantity of limes went down, and the quality went down. This trickled over to the bar owners and restaurant owners throughout the country, and they were faced with how to deal with this shortage of limes on the fly. It wasn't a critical supply, a critical good to run their business, but it was important. So bar owners were faced how to deal with this situation in short notice. So in hindsight, something that you would consider when the sun is shining, look on the horizon and see, is there anything wrong? Is there anything unusual? Speak with your suppliers in advance. If you don't ask, you won't know. So maybe pick up the phone and ask your supplier if there's something that's critical. Have you heard anything that I had not heard? Does everything seem normal to you? So keep these things in mind. Sometimes they can help mitigate a disaster. Evacuation plans. When it comes, this should look familiar. When it comes to a disaster situation, you're going to want to consider a couple things. Have an evacuation plan in place. A lot of public entities are required to do this, but what would your business do if your business was struck by disaster right now while you were here? How would your business respond? How would your employees function? Would they be able to function without you? Maybe, but maybe you should consider this. So have redundant alert measures in place, a form of communication. So is that phone call going to work, or is that group email sufficient? And establish safe points for immediate business. This is critical. If a disaster strikes your business, if a car drives through the front of your business, which I would consider a disaster, how can you quickly resume operations and get your doors open? So if your business is going to be shut down for 2 weeks because an elderly person drove through the front of your business, can you sell your product or good in the parking lot? Can you increase your online presence in advance? Perhaps. I interviewed a business called Accounting by More, located in Hillsborough County, Florida, on the Alafaya River. There's 3 employees of Accounting by More. Full service accounting firm. Prior to the hurricane situation, Hurricane Irma, they shared all of their data because they're in the accounting business, they're able to do so. All client information on all 3 computers. All 3 employees had access to everybody's clients, which is not typically normal, but for this time it was. So they secured their tangible assets, their brick and mortar locations. Hurricane Irma came and went. They were able to resume operations in a day. All they needed was electric and internet, and they're able to continue forward. So this business did a good job of having an alternative location, which for them is remotely or anywhere, to resume operations. 2 of 3 of the employees live on the Alafaya River. Hurricane Irma came and went, and they were fine. 1 day later, the river flooded, and both of their homes were a total loss. The owner, Amy Moore, her business is fine rather. Her home has been condemned by the county. When I talked to her in April, she's living in a 5th-wheel trailer on her own property on the Alafaya River. So she hasn't quite caught up with the process. So real people, real businesses. Her business did well, but she was quite affected, her and her employees. So keep in mind these things can affect you as well. A couple months ago, I was walking through downtown Brooksville. I was giving this presentation to the Greater Hernando Chamber of Commerce, the same presentation. And I walked through downtown because I was there a day early, walked towards the high school down the street. 20 minutes later, I returned, and I found this car in the intersection, and it hit this light. Does anyone here think that this light knew that this was going to happen? Probably not. So what if this was your business? Building resilience in your supply chain. So when it comes to disaster, leading up to, during, and after, consider your key products and services, and how can you continue to deliver those key products and services in times of disaster. So figure out what your bread and butter is, and how can you continue to deliver those goods. If your supplier is one flat tire away from going out of business, identify a secondary supplier. At least know who they are, or find another supplier. And identify any single points of failure. So put yourself in a state of controlled paranoia. Look for weak links in your business. If your computer system at your business is one spam email away from blowing up, or you run out and buy a bunch of generators, but then you can't buy gas, look for weak links in advance when the sun is shining. In a service level agreement, this is a written agreement that you can put in place with your suppliers to define the level of expected service you'd expect to receive from your supplier. So something in writing, more than a handshake, to say, in a disaster situation, I expect you to deliver as if there was no disaster situation. You can try to hold their feet to the fire a little bit with this agreement. It goes one step further than a handshake, and it's something that you want to consider prior to a disaster situation. If you're in a disaster, you're going to hope that you thought about doing something like this. The Buddying Up Alliance. So this is something that I have seen worked. It's something that I like quite a bit. This is the Angry Pepper Tap House restaurant located in Seminole, Florida. They have an alliance with the Angry Pepper Waterside Restaurant in Madeira Beach, Florida. Both restaurants are independently owned and operated. During a disaster situation, they can do a couple things to help each other out. This is useful in times of disaster, staff shortage, flu epidemics, whatever it may be. They can share inventory between locations. So if one location runs out of one inventory, they can shoot over to the other location, grab inventory, and return the inventory at a later date. So you'd be surprised how helpful this can be. Exchange reliable supply information. If one business is having difficulty with some type of situation, obtaining some type of product or service, it's likely the other business has dealt with that. Or when it comes to liability things, somebody slips and falls, maybe one restaurant has already dealt with that situation and knows a strategy to persevere. And lend staff during shortages. If one restaurant has a lot more volume due to a party or employees go missing or sick, employees can jet over to and from each location in a moment's notice to help out in a pinch. So these are strategies that I have seen worked well. Why would you want to work with your competitor? Maybe you don't. But in times of disaster or looming disaster, perhaps you want to think about these types of things. At least consider them. Joe's Island Clams is a one-man clam manufacturing group, company. This is the owner, DJ Strott. He takes his truck and his boat to his underwater parcel. He owns the rights to that underwater parcel. He stocks his underwater parcel with baby clams called clam stock. He has 3 main suppliers of clam stock. If any of them were to go out of business, his business would fail. He defines his business as fragile, but it's lucrative, and that's why he does it. He goes back to his underwater parcel, takes his baby clams that have turned into adult clams, takes them to his detached clam manufacturing plant, processes, cleans, refrigerates, and then takes them to market. So Hurricane Irma came and went. Prior to Hurricane Irma, he secured his tangible assets best he could. His boat, his trailer, his clam factory, wasn't a lot he could do for his underwater parcel. Hurricane Irma came and went, dropped a small branch on his factory. He was able to pick up the pieces quickly with insurance. It wasn't a major loss. However, Hurricane Irma brought lots of freshwater flooding, rain. Freshwater flooding kills clams. 30% of his inventory was killed because of rain. So in the months of April and May, when I spoke with him, he was out of inventory. And when he was typically in inventory, he sells $3,000 to $4,000 worth of clams a week, I believe is what we talked about. So his inventory was depleted. He was having to look for other opportunities to make money. So in hindsight, a strategy that he would have liked to have implemented or given a chance was to stock his beds with additional baby clams in the event that some of them would live. Inevitably, some would have died, but he would have liked to take that gamble. Response. What do you do when responding to crisis? This is a McDonald's near my house in St. Petersburg. It was one of 2 restaurants that were open the day after Hurricane Irma that I saw. I took this picture, and there's probably about 80 cars in the drive-thru. Has anyone here had to operate your business in less than optimal conditions? Or tried to scramble employees in a moment's notice to get your business staffed? Does anyone here think that this McDonald's was selling 100% of their menu that day? Certainly, they weren't. I'm sure of it. But this business, in this picture that I saw, or when I saw it in real time, made me think that this business did a good job picking up the pieces and resuming operations, getting the doors open. So I was impressed. When responding to crisis, when your business is struck by disaster or whatever it is in your life, but focusing with businesses, things that you need to do: boots on the ground, get to your location as soon as you can and evaluate the status of your building, your tangible assets. Where are your stakeholders? Where are your employees? How difficult is it going to be to put the pieces back together? In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, prior to the storm, we saw the New Orleans Police Department sort of disband, sort of dissolve. So they had a skeleton crew when it was time to deal with the aftermath of the disaster. So think, how would your employees operate? How would they function? Can they survive without you? Are they going to be dependable or not? Can you call in ringers, maybe retired employees of your business to help fill the gaps? So do you have these options in advance? And if not, what can you do to kind of build some continuity into your business? Coordinate your next steps, figure out how to get your doors open, and initiate communication with everybody involved. So not just your employees, but your customers, your stakeholders, your delivery drivers, anybody and everybody. Imagine if your business went an extended period of time with zero communication to the outside world, what that would mean to your business. So even a sign on the door can go a long ways to helping you out. In recovery, so when it comes to disaster, some businesses are going to be affected much worse than others. They'll have to go the route of insurance much slower. There's other resources out there for this type of situation, but let's focus on the insurance aspects. There's things like bridge loans, and other types of short-time funding that can kind of help, but it's tough to navigate in that situation. So these are kind of the basics with insurance. They're no-brainers. You probably are going to wonder why I'm saying this, but there's a few that are important. So when it comes to disaster, get in touch with your insurance company immediately. Get them the correct information they need, correct spellings of names, addresses, businesses, everything that they require. Photograph your damaged goods, everything, document everything that you can. Don't remove any property until the adjuster has come with you, held your hand, and is on the same page as you. Make only repairs that are necessary to prevent your business from dealing with further damage. If you make unauthorized repairs that your insurance company considers unauthorized, you could detriment their ability to cover you. So if you don't play ball with them, it might affect you later on. So just be mindful of these things. Does anyone here know who your insurance rep is when it comes to your homeowner's insurance or business insurance? Do you know that person's name and phone number? I don't. Well, I do now, but it's something that you'd want to consider beforehand. So just things to consider. Prepare an inventory of everything that was damaged. Go with the adjuster and make sure that they are on the same page as you. Be with that adjuster when they're on location. I put this in: hire licensed, reputable contractors, and that goes without saying. That's a no-brainer. But what I should put in here, or what I want you to take home, is when it comes to contractors, look for red flags. To me, that's the most important. So a contractor that wants 100% payment up front, has a history of chasing payments, has a poor reputation, has no reputation. These are red flags. These are things that you want to avoid. If it seems too good to be true, it is, especially when it comes to contractors. If you get a denial, get that denial in writing. And if that denial seems unfair, contact the Florida Office of Insurance Regulation. If you have a valid claim, they will fight for you. That's the state going above and beyond. And when recovering from crisis, so when you're dealing with this situation, you're moving forward and trying to get back on your feet, consider a few things.
I'm sorry. I started trying to slow you off.
Identify lessons learned. So think about what your business did well and what didn't go well and what you can do better next time around. How can we improve our communications? Was that text message, was that phone call, was that email sufficient, or were people left out of the loop? Were we satisfied with the way our technology performed? Did we run out and buy a bunch of generators and then we couldn't find gas like we saw in Puerto Rico? Not making a comparison to Puerto Rico, but how did your technology perform? Are changes needed in our insurance policy? Quick question I should have asked you a second ago. If you have a disaster, you have damage, and you need to file an insurance claim for your business, and the damage occurred in your business reaches a certain threshold, but that threshold is below the deductible. Is it worth filing that claim? And the answer is yes, because that's a 12-month term for that insurance policy. So if that damage is at a certain threshold below the deductible and you get hit with a secondary disaster next month, another hurricane, and that new amount of damage reaches or exceeds that initial deductible, you're going to want to wish you had that first claim on the books. Furthermore, if your stormwater system, your sewer system backs up in your business, is that covered by your standard business insurance or flood insurance? So things that you need to know in advance. So did your staff fully understand their roles? Did they know what to do? Were you not there and they didn't know how to perform, or did they function well, or did they need additional training? Do your staff need cross-training? Perhaps you had some staff that were out and other employees had to do their job, but they didn't know how to do that job. Were there delays in reopening your business, and if so, why? So when it comes to disasters, we do have some advance notice, but it's not always the case, and we don't know where disaster is going to strike until after it strikes. So it's risky business. Has anyone here been to an outdoor tiki bar somewhere when a storm is coming in, a rainstorm, a thunderstorm, and all of a sudden everybody at the bar instantly becomes a weatherman? They all say the same thing. It's going to go right around us. It's going to blow right over us. It's not going to rain here. And then a lot of times it does. I've seen that. So when it comes to disasters, we don't really know what's going to happen until after it's come and went. So it'll be interesting to see what takes place on Wednesday. So the time to repair the roof is when the sun is shining. Think about continuity today. It takes time, it takes money, it takes effort, but you want to at least start thinking about these things in advance. So thank you for being a good audience. I'm Brian with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you, Brian. That was wonderful. Does anyone have any questions for Brian while we've got him here? No questions?
I just, it's okay. Did you have to get out of Dodge when Irma came through, and was all of St. Pete emptied?
It seemed that way. It was interesting watching some of the patterns. A lot of the people who were evacuating from other parts of Florida, in particular South Florida, went through this area, past this area, towards the Citrus Hernando area, and kept on going. It was interesting to watch people from other parts of Florida drink their water, buy their gas, and stay in their hotel rooms. As far as St. Pete, yeah, it was kind of scary. I chose to stay. I set up kind of like a emergency operations center in my house, which is just my own personal thing. My parents are nearby, my family is nearby, so I wasn't going to go anywhere. But quite a few people evacuated. It was the first time that I was born in 1990, so this was really the first major storm event that I have ever seen here, because I was born in Florida. So I got to watch the worst storm I've ever seen take place with Irma, which was pretty bad for some parts and others fared well. It was the first time that I would go to a Home Depot and see the shelves cleared out of a material set. Didn't even look like they were really, functional to help your home or your business. Or going to a grocery store and seeing the shelves cleared out of anything and everything. Not being able to buy gas 3 days before the storm. Or when I did buy gas 3 days before the storm, the pump was, barely going. So it was just, I saw a lot of firsts with this storm that I've never seen before as a Florida resident. So yeah, it was quite scary. It was very eye-opening. But we can go another 10 years without people even thinking about that type of thing, because it's easy to be complacent. In 1992 or 1993, when we had Hurricane Andrew hit the Miami-Dade area, that was an abnormally slow hurricane season, but they received a big hurricane. So it's kind of interesting to watch those things unfold.
You hear about FEMA. Are there any special programs for businesses when FEMA comes in?
Yeah, quite a few. There's all types of programs that are coming out when it comes to any type of disaster that occurs. One thing that I have been seeing lately with Red Tide, there's been funding allocated by different entities, and I don't know if FEMA is one of them, but it's, yeah, certainly. When disaster strikes, there are opportunities of funding and assistance after the fact.
Is there something that we should prepare for now? In other words, remember what you said, get your claim in first.
Right.
So if I'm looking for the next one, if my business was up in the Panhandle, prepare for the next one. Who can I call now in FEMA to be able to get my paperwork for financial aid in place?
Right. Let me think about that. I can get back to you, but something I'll say to that is, as far as a planning perspective goes, always put yourself in a state of continuity. When it comes to disasters, the first, I believe, 48 or 72 hours as far as a citizen is going to fall on your hands. So you need to prepare yourself as best you can, because there may be government help, and chances are there will be, but it will be at a later date. So be ready to carry yourself as best you can. As far as who to call or what you can do, I can look into it, absolutely, and find out the optimal method that you want to follow.
Yeah, because I have a business, we've got about 350 clients,
Mm-hmm.
and I put out a newsletter. I guess I'm gonna learn how to do something else soon. And, it's part of the services that we offer to our clients.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you, Brian, maybe, because I think there's been a lot of mixed ideas or comments on what a state of emergency is for the state or counties, since the governor's put the whole state or just certain counties in? Or is that something you can speak to?
Right, yeah. It's
What does that mean? Is it just that the funding's open, or are these people supposed to be panicking? Or
right. As far as an actual definition and how it's declared, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what state we're in. I don't know if it's statewide or limited to counties. But I know with Hurricane Irma, just a stat here, 93% of all small businesses were located in Florida in a federally declared disaster area. So that leads me to think that it's not specific to the entire state as a blanket term,
Right.
but as it pertains to the counties, unless it's big enough and encompasses everything.
Yep.
So that's what I would think.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah,
Ryan, I was just wondering, do you guys have any type of checklist or something that we could get or share with all the chamber members and stuff under the
Yeah.
video or whatever, just so you can kind of have something like that?
That's an easy one, yes. It's something that I have. It's also made available by, I believe it's called disaster.biz or disaster.something. It's run by the state of Florida. It's the same principle as continuity for your business. Continuity is the fancy term for preparing your business. So the state wants you to do that. The federal government wants you to do that. I have checklists. They do as well. So it's basically, how to prepare your business for dummies. Step 1, do this. Write this down. Cross-train your employees. So I'd like to get that to you. It's certainly something
That'd be
I can
great.
do.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
include that with the video
Right.
and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be easy to do.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Brian. This was great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think what I picked up the most is you really don't realize how bilingual we are here in Florida. For you to have a game plan and to be able to reach out and communicate to all of your employees at one time at their level of communication. So that really took it to a basic 101 that I've seen when a storm hits. Everybody acts a little bit different, and you're in the place of employment. You need to get home to your family and secure things there as well. So it would be very beneficial to be able to have, number one, a form of communication that is mainstreamed to all of your employees, one person in charge of that communication, so it's crystal clear how we're going to operate as an organization, and then being able to get it out in a manner that everyone understands.
Sure, absolutely.
Huge takeaway. Thank you for
Tell us
that.
your
Thank
name
you.
and your company.
Caroline Maley, and I am actually working with and for speakers and actually supplying them the place to share their message with the world, whether it be digital or from stage. So this is perfect for what I do, to be
Excellent.
able to get it out to the world.
Mira back from Overnight Success Studios and BackAV.com. Brian, thank you so much. I think what I got from it the most was the examples that you used with the real businesses. That was cool. And I think the number one thing for us with doing with digital files and videos and all that stuff, I'm thinking we should have everything somewhere in the cloud stored around,
Right.
where we're not depending on local computer systems. And I think the accounting example you did, that was awesome. So Yeah, thank you again
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
presentation. Thanks.